So welcome to this webinar on the importance of aircraft records. And because I'm talking to IAs, of course, we're talking maintenance records. My name is Larry Heinbaugh, the Executive Director for the Foundation for Business Aircraft Records Excellence. We are a nonprofit company with a mission to improve aircraft maintenance record keeping in our industry. And we do this several ways. We write articles and blogs and post on social media and in aircraft maintenance magazines. We give talks at seminars at regional and annual aircraft events. And we offer FAA-approved educational courses, both for IA renewal credits and also FAR 147 technical school curriculums. And we also have an aircraft documents specialist certification program, which is available online, or we can come out to your facility for classroom instruction. So the topics of this webinar are going to be, are aircraft maintenance records important? If so, which ones? And is there a difference between important maintenance aircraft records and critically important maintenance records? And finally, if they are important, how should we protect aircraft maintenance records in this 21st century we find ourselves? So the first question, are maintenance records even important? A lot of you are probably shaking your head yes. So I offer the following scenario. A business aircraft sitting on the ramp at JFK in New York waiting on passengers. When they arrive, it fires up its engines, taxis out, and takes off. And the airplane flies nonstop from New York to Melbourne, Australia, a long flight. But during the entire flight, the aircraft remained safe. The flight was uneventful. Not even weather was a factor. And the passengers are happy. After all, they are where they want to be when they want to be there. All of this without consulting the aircraft maintenance records. So again, I ask, are aircraft maintenance records even that important? Well, the answer is unequivocally yes. They are important, and they're important for three reasons. They're important to the aircraft, and we're going to learn about that in just a minute, and subsequently the aircraft operator. Records are also important to the aircraft owner, particularly the value they bring to the asset that the owner has. Aircraft records, as we will see, are extremely valuable. And they are important to the technicians working on the aircraft, not just relying on the historical information to know what to do, but the entry they put in the aircraft record for the work they're doing. So important to the aircraft. Did you know that an aircraft's airworthiness certificate, usually its standard airworthiness certificate, is dependent upon total compliance with Federal Aviation Regulation Part 43. That includes documentation. So one missing record, one missing document from the record renders an aircraft's airworthiness certificate invalid. That, of course, means the aircraft is technically grounded and unairworthy. And aircraft records are important for the owner. For example, the Falcon 900 that you're looking at was owned by a gentleman that decided a few years ago he had owned the airplane for quite a while. It was getting a little long in the tooth, and he thought he would put it up for sale and get a newer model. Now, the airplane was immaculately maintained. The paint livery was in excellent condition, the airplane being hangared anytime it wasn't flying. The interior was your typical VIP interior with silks and woods and exotic leathers and gold plating. And every time anything in the interior was broken or not working properly, it was fixed immediately. So when this aircraft owner put the airplane up for sale, he was happy to see that he got multiple offers on the airplane. In fact, one of the offers was higher than his asking price. So the normal protocol was followed, right? Money transferred to escrow and the airplane flown to an MRO for a pre-purchase inspection. Now the pilot that took the airplane to this pre-purchase inspection knew that as a part of the inspection, they were going to want to audit the records. And so having the records on board the airplane, when he got to the MRO, he said, I will hand carry these records to the inspection office, which he did. And when he got to the inspection office, he said, I know you're going to audit these records as part of this pre-purchase inspection, but please call me when you are finished with them and I am going to come get them. I will take personal charge of the records. And so several days later, he gets a phone call from the inspection office who says, we're done with the records, we're done with the audit, please come get them. And so he did. And on his way to get the records, he's thinking, where am I going to put these? I can't put them back on the airplane. The inspection is still going on and there are people on and off the airplane. They just don't seem secure. But then I can't put them in the hotel room either. I'm often not in the room. And the maids are in and out. And they just don't feel secure there. So he had the brilliant idea, put the aircraft records in the trunk of his rental car. That way they're secure, locked in the trunk, and they're with him wherever he goes. The thing is, the next day he gets another phone call, this time from headquarters. And they say, they found a little spot of corrosion on the airplane. Not big deal, a big deal, easy to rectify. But it's going to take time to access this area, to make this repair, and then time to put everything back. So rather than you stay at that location yet another week, why don't you come on home? And when the airplane is finished with the inspection, you can take the aircraft to where it needs to go. And so the pilot calls the co-pilot that's in the hotel and says, pack up, we're going home. And so they did. He rushes back to the hotel, packs up. They jump in the rental car, take it to the rental car agency, turn it in, run to the gate, get on board the airplane, make the flight, of course, get home. Now life is good, right? The pilot's home with mama and the children and the pets. And best of all, he's got a week where he knows he's not going to need to go anywhere. He can stay home. And life is good. Right up until the time when that pilot bolts straight up in bed that night and thinks to himself, my God, I've left the aircraft records in the trunk of the rental car. So needless to say, he's on pins and needles until the following morning when he knows the rental car agency opens, and he calls and he says, I left a set of books in the trunk of the rental car. And the agent checks the computer and says, oh, that car has already been cleaned and it's back out on the lot for re-rental. But don't worry, we know who cleaned the car and we'll ask him what he has done with those books. We'll call you back. So another couple hours of pins and needles, and the pilot gets the phone call that he dreads, right? This is the rental car company. We located the guy who cleaned the car, and he remembers seeing that box of old crappy books. He figured it was something that you wanted to throw out on your way to turn in the car, just didn't get the opportunity. So he threw them away. but it gets worse. We've gone to the dumpster where those records were thrown into, and it was empty. The trash company has already been there. So I'm afraid the records are gone. Okay, so pilot confers with the owner on what to do, because naturally the sale is not going to go through. Nobody's going to want to buy a VIP aircraft with no records and unairworthy. So the owner says, bring the airplane back here. Don't tell anybody. Just bring it back here. And we're going to spend the next month or 2 or 3, whatever it takes. We're going to resurrect those records. We're going to get copies of everything. And they did. They brought the airplane home, and the pilot and the co-pilot and the maintenance people and the flight attendant and the ground handlers and the secretaries, everybody made an effort of calling the OEM on the airplane, every repair station they can remember visiting, every part manufacturer that they believe had a component on the airplane, everyone they could think of. And after 6 months, they are actually able to get back about 80% of the records, which is really quite an effort and very good for an airplane its age. But unfortunately, 80% here means 20% still missing. But that was the best they could do. The owner put the airplane back up for sale. This time, did he get any offers? The answer is no. He got no offers. Nobody wants to buy an aircraft with 20% of the records still missing. As I told you earlier, that airplane's airworthiness certificate is invalid, and the airplane is technically unairworthy. So after a couple of weeks of no action on the airplane, he decided, well, I'll take the airplane to auction. I want to sell it. I want to upgrade into a newer model, and let's see what I get for it. And so he did. And the airplane was sold at auction. But the price he got for the airplane at auction, with 20% of the records missing, was actually $8 million less than the offer that he had originally that took the airplane to pre-buy. $8 million. So quick math, how much were those records worth to that airplane? At least $8 million. So records are valuable to the owner. And records are important for the aircraft technicians working on the airplane. For that, I have another story. This one involves a King Air 90 that was brought in for a routine inspection. It was only going to be on the ground for a couple days. But during the inspection, they found an anomaly on the top skin of the left wing, outboard of the left engine. So they decided that they would investigate this a little further, which unfortunately meant defueling the airplane, removing the access panels from the wing, and looking up in the wing. And when they did, what did they see? Structural damage. Okay, so now the airplane is technically grounded. It can't go anywhere until this wing is repaired. And then they can finish the inspection and get the airplane back returned to service. Usually no problem, right? This occurs all the time in aircraft maintenance. However, with this airplane, it was a problem. Not that the airplane was owned by some rich guy that just had to make the flight the next day or that week. This airplane was owned by the United States government, and it was on loan to the U.S. Forestry Service as both a fire spotter and a troop movement reconnaissance style airplane during the fire. This airplane spent a tremendous amount of its life in very heavy turbulence. And because it's a government-owned airplane, anytime an airplane is grounded that a government owns, doesn't have to be involved even in an incident or an accident, grounding is enough to generate an NTSB investigation. And so one was naturally launched on this aircraft. And the NTSB investigators came in and did what they do, right? They looked at the airplane, they audited the aircraft records, and they talked to everybody involved in this airplane, from maintenance people to pilots to ground handlers, to try and get the story on the airplane. And this is what they found out. That several months before this inspection, a pilot flying the airplane, again in heavy turbulence, noted that there was an anomaly on the left wing top skin outboard of the left engine, and he squawked it. So when the airplane got on the ground, maintenance took a look at this thing, decided they would pull the airplane in the hangar and do a heavyweight landing, high turbulence inspection, and they did. And they looked for the thing the pilot saw. Did they see any evidence of anything amiss with the wing? And the answer is no. Not even a paint blemish or cracking of the paint in the area the pilot said he thought he saw something. So the maintenance people conferred with each other and finally decided it doesn't appear anything's wrong with this airplane. So they noted in the logbook, conducted this heavyweight landing, high turbulence inspection, no fault found, aircraft returned to service. The NTSB cited that very thing as the reason why the airplane was grounded today. That had maintenance only noted in the entry that the pilot had squawked an anomaly on the left wing and that it should be watched, that maybe it would have been found before so much structural damage occurred. And maybe it would have been found before anything really happened. Thank God this inspection happened at that time in the airplane, because the NTSB said more flying could have caused ultimately a failure of the wing and at least one fatality, if not more. So what happened to the maintenance people involved in that inspection? All of them were terminated. And the poor IA that returned the airplane to service as no fault found was hounded by the FAA for months, telling him that he had violated FAR 4312 and had a fraudulent entry, because indeed there was a fault on the airplane. So that record for that airplane, that event, was life-changing to all of those technicians. So yeah, aircraft records are important to technicians more than just learning the history of the airplane. They're important to do correctly each time we work on the aircraft. Okay, so records are important. It begs the question, which aircraft maintenance records are important? Is it all of them? Should all of the maintenance records be treated the same? Okay, I want you to hold that thought while I introduce the instructor, Bruce Spalding, who will be teaching or does teach the video classes for the 10 classes that Business Aircraft Records offers for IA renewal credits. Bruce is going to tell us about maintenance records in general in this course entitled Maintenance Records and Documentation. So here we go.
Documentation accumulated on an aircraft over its lifetime is critically important to the aircraft's ongoing value and airworthiness. These documents not only back up and support the aircraft's airworthiness, they also verify the historical activities that have been accomplished on the aircraft over its lifetime. For this reason, the aircraft's maintenance records become a vital part of the asset of the aircraft itself. It is the condition, organization, and completeness of these records that has the most profound effect on the value and perceived airworthiness of the aircraft when it's bought or sold, or worse, involved in an incident or accident. And when an aircraft is involved in an accident that causes serious damage, personal injury, or loss of life, chances are both an NTSB investigation and a lawsuit are going to follow. The investigators will request far-reaching records of every associated repair station, company, and individual that has ever touched the aircraft, and carefully inspect them for any violations of Title 14 CFRs or company procedures. Maintenance records may either convict you or absolve you. When the FAA and legal professionals come home, good record keeping may one day mean the difference between joy and freedom, or stress and torment, for the technician involved in maintaining the aircraft. This course will focus on Title 14 CFR Part 91, Subpart E, maintenance, preventive maintenance, and alterations, especially the maintenance records and documentation necessitated by Parts 91.405, 91.417, 91.419, and 91.421. These requirements form the basis for the maintenance records and documentation required for almost every U.S. registered aircraft. Most of the regulatory guidance concerning aircraft maintenance documentation in Title 14 CFR can be found in Parts 91 and 43. All U.S. registered aircraft operated under Parts 91, 121, 125, 129, or 135, and repair stations operating under Part 145 must follow these regulations. Insufficient or non-existent aircraft records are enough to make an aircraft unairworthy by invalidating its standard airworthiness certificate, and beyond the loss of use of the aircraft until the maintenance documents are found, or the maintenance or inspection reaccomplished. Aircraft records and documents are not covered by insurance, even by companies that routinely insure other aircraft-related assets such as hull damage.
Oh, what happened? Did I do that? Oh my gosh. All right, I'll keep going.
Liability, property damage, etc. Aircraft records stand as one of the most vulnerable assets that are a necessary part of an aircraft's operation. This section in Part 91 stipulates that it is the owner of the aircraft, or operator, as the owner's substitute, who is responsible for the records associated with the aircraft. This is reinforced in Part 91.417A. Additionally, Part 91.405 goes on to state that the owner or operator is also responsible for the following: that they will have the aircraft regularly inspected as aircraft is approved for return to service before it flies again, and that any instrument permitted to be inoperative is properly placarded, and then repaired, replaced, removed, or re-inspected at the next required inspection. The section starts out by reiterating that it is the registered owner, or operator of the aircraft that must keep the following records: records of the maintenance, preventive maintenance, and alterations to the aircraft as part of its approved inspection program, and consisting of the following: a description of the work performed, including the reference data, the date of the completion of the work, and the signature and certificate number of the person approving the aircraft for return to service. The aircraft's record must also contain the following information: total time in service of the aircraft, including its engines, propellers or rotors, the current status of all life-limited parts for the aircraft, engines, propellers, rotors or appliances, the time since last overhaul of all items that are required to be overhauled at specific intervals, the current inspection status of the aircraft, which includes the time since last inspection of the aircraft and its component parts, copies of the forms used in each maintenance entry for each major alteration to the aircraft and or its component parts, and the current status of all applicable airworthiness directives. An airworthiness directive listing must include the AD number, the method of compliance, the revision date of the AD performed, and if the AD is recurring, the time and date of compliance with the AD, and when it is next due. The length of time each maintenance entry or record is kept depends on the nature of the event. If the maintenance event was a normal scheduled event that will be repeated, 14 CFR states that the record of the event would need to be held for at least 1 year, or until the same event is repeated or superseded. If the maintenance action was any other type of event, the record will need to be retained and transferred at the time the aircraft is sold. And, if a list of defects is furnished to the owner or operator as a result of an inspection, the discrepancies must be retained until those discrepancies are repaired, and the aircraft returned to service. When transferring ownership of an aircraft, the seller is obligated to transfer all records cited in Title 14 CFR Part 91.417. And lastly, an owner or operator may use an engine's new maintenance records without previous operating history, in other words, zero-timed, if the engine is disassembled, inspected, repaired as necessary, then reassembled, tested, and approved by the engine manufacturer, or an agency approved by the engine manufacturer. The following must be accomplished regarding the engine's records: a signed statement giving the date the engine was rebuilt, changes made to the engine as a result of any airworthiness directives, and any changes made to the engine or any manufacturer's service bulletins that were incorporated.
Okay, so let's take a little closer look at the federal aviation regulations regarding maintenance records. And let's see what they have to say about keeping these records. So the rubber hits the road in Title 14 CFR 91.419, which is the transfer of maintenance records. If they're that important, this should certainly be transferred. And indeed, this says any owner or operator who sells a U.S. registered aircraft shall transfer to the purchaser at the time of sale the following records. And notice there are two paragraphs there. Paragraph A is the records specified in 91.417A2, and B is the record specified in 91.417A1. So 91.417, the maintenance records the FAA considers important. Let's take a look at 91.417. So paragraph A1 and A2 state that records to be kept for 1 year or until repeated are your Part 43 records, right? The Part 43.9 and the 43.11. We could call it routine and non-routine maintenance events, but that's all the maintenance events accomplished on the airplane. The other records to be kept for the life of the aircraft are the total time on the aircraft, the current status of the life-limited parts and the overhauls, the current status and the time since the last inspection, a copy of all 337s generated for this airplane, and the current status of all applicable AD notes. Okay, again, let's take a closer look at what's just records. We have all of the Part 43 maintenance documentation records. We have the status of LLPs and overhaul components. We have the 337s accomplished on the airplane, and that's all of the 337s that were used. And we have the status of the AD compliance on the airplane. And that's it. 4 things. Things we don't see. in 91417. Things like checklists, task cards, packing slips, work orders, discrepancy lists, tear down reports, shipping documents, component maintenance manuals, ICAs, and parts tags, including 8130s. Now, the question is, are these records important? And the answer is, of course they are. For one thing, these records provide traceability. If you put a part on an airplane that in 3 weeks or 4 weeks is determined to be a problem, maybe even causing an incident or an accident on the airplane, you can bet the FAA is going to come to you wanting to know where you got that part. These documents also provide justification of the work accomplished. A lot of FAR 145 repair stations are going to cite the task cards as the reason why they're charging you the money they did to accomplish the work that was done. And some of the documents are associated with the repair or inspection. For example, non-destructive testing, X-ray reports or eddy currents, service bulletin information that was incorporated on the airplane, that type of thing. And of course, they provide a detailed history of the repairs accomplished. The maintenance entry may say, conducted a phase 2 inspection. See the work order for the details. And so we need to keep the details that are in that work order to know exactly what was done on the airplane. So again, all of that being good information, what are the primary aircraft maintenance records the FAA is most concerned about? The 43 records, the status of the life-limited parts and overhaul components, the 337s that have been used against the airplane, the status of the AD compliance, and that's it. That's all. Everything else does not need to be included in what we refer to as the logbook. Now you can search the FARs from 1 to 199. You will not find mention of logbooks. That is a construct we have done, particularly in business aviation aircraft, to keep track of our maintenance records. But I personally believe we should call the logbook information the critical important maintenance records. And that is only the 91.147 records. Everything else can be kept in file cabinets or boxes. But we don't. We find all of that information stuffed into the logbook. A lot of times the maintenance people putting it in the logbook don't even know what 4147, I'm sorry, 91.417 says about what needs to go. They just put it in there. So to help us understand a little bit more about this information, let's introduce Bruce again and see what he has to say about excessive or unnecessary information put in with the critical maintenance records.
Aircraft records are one of the most misunderstood aspects of business aircraft operations. For starters, looking through the federal aviation regulations to determine what should be put into an aircraft logbook is challenging at best. For the professional aviation maintenance technician, this lack of understanding of exactly what should be included in a logbook is often the source of hours of frustration and wasted time looking for important information. Consequently, maintenance personnel often collect every piece of paper generated over the lifetime of the airplane and include it in the logbook. This, of course, results in a tremendous amount of unnecessary data. The information necessary to have in the aircraft record is stipulated in Title 14 CFR Parts 91 and 43. However, these references, although very specific, are difficult to read and are not always clearly understood by many aviation technicians. Including all this information does do one significant thing, however. It assures those who are not sure what is required to be in the aircraft record to be certain that the information that's truly important is always added, no matter how much extra bulk is incurred in the process. According to Title 14 CFR Part 91, here is what information the record must contain. A record of the maintenance, modifications, and alterations accomplished to the aircraft. The total time and landings or cycles on the aircraft and engines. The current status of all live, limited, and calendar overall components installed. The aircraft's current inspection status. A comprehensive list of Form 337s applicable to the aircraft. A list of ADs accomplished on the aircraft over its lifetime. And the status of 14 CFR Part 91.411 and 91.413 altimeter and transponder checks. To repeat, what's not listed, and is not required to be part of the aircraft's record. Things like task cards, packing lists, shipping documents, checklists, work orders, teardown reports, discrepancy lists, component maintenance manuals, instructions for continued airworthiness, and red, yellow, and green parts tags. Of course, this does not mean that these documents are not important information to keep on hand as a record of the maintenance history of the aircraft. And this is not the total listing of items regularly found incorrectly placed into aircraft logbooks. It only means that these documents do not belong in the critical airworthiness record. In other words, the logbook itself. The opposite can be true as well. Often information that should be in an aircraft's record is missing. The two reasons this happens both go back to a lack of understanding on the aircraft technician's part of exactly what is needed to be in the aircraft record in the first place. Whether it's too much unimportant information making the important information that much harder to find, or the important information not in the record to begin with, the results are the same. Critical airworthiness information can't be found in the aircraft record. This typically becomes a significant issue anytime the aircraft is bought or sold, or when the aircraft becomes a charter candidate and placed on an operator's Part 135 certificate. The bottom line is that the records, logbooks, that have to do with the aircraft's airworthiness should be limited to the items specified in Title 14 CFR Parts 91.411, 91.413, 91.417, and no more.
Okay. So we see that maintenance records are important. So if they are so important and have such value, the question then becomes, how do we protect the records from harm? Well, typically aircraft records are found in paper form. And because they're in paper form, we put these records in gun safes. Some maintenance people put them in fireproof cabinets. Others have the scenario that the maintenance records are never allowed to leave the maintenance office. All of those very limiting for anyone that wants to get to and see or use these records. This is the 21st century. The way we should be keeping maintenance records from harm is keeping them electronically, and you'll see why in just a minute. The fact of the matter is aircraft electronic maintenance records can be backed up in multiple places, unlike the paper. They can be shared with multiple people in multiple locations. They'll never get lost or damaged, again, backed up in multiple places for multiple times. And an electronic record can be searched for the critical information in the record anywhere in the record in just seconds, as opposed to sometimes what takes hours in a paper logbook. The fact of the matter is electronic records offer aircraft maintenance the best level of protection, the greatest amount of security, and the highest value to cost of anything we do in aviation. we should be backing up the paper record electronically. I think it's the most important thing we can do aside from keeping the airplanes going in this 21st century. Now, some of you are aware that I am the principal in an electronic record keeping company called Vision Aircraft Records. And I'm proud to say that our electronic record keeping meets all of the suggestions or requirements of AC 12078A. And this has resulted in several operators, including Pentastar Aviation and Foundation Aviation and a couple of other 135 operators, getting FAA acceptance and approval to use the electronic record keeping system to replace their paper records. These companies have as the future goal to go completely paperless, and they'll use our system to do it. The advisory circular, titled Electronic Signatures, Electronic Record Keeping and Manuals, of course, provides standards and guidance for these things. And so we're going to look at just a couple of the items that the advisory circular calls out and how Vision satisfies that. Okay, the advisory circular says the system should protect confidential information. Of course, that's important, but like almost every electronic software you use today, it takes a username and a password to get in. No one can arbitrarily go in and see the records. The system must ensure that the information in an electronic record is not altered in an unauthorized way. This, of course, would be a violation of FAR 43.12. But the reality is that electronic records are encrypted. And the image that you're looking at now was once paper, but now electronic. So that even if you were to hack into the logbook itself, you would not be able to get to this document being encrypted, and you could not change it. It goes on to say the system should have procedures for auditing the computer system periodically to ensure the quality, integrity, and accuracy of the system. A big advantage in the electronic world. We can tell with these logbooks when the aircraft logbook was viewed and by whom, when it was printed, searched, uploaded, moved, and more information that we can gather who did this and when to an electronic record that we have no idea with the paper. So the bottom line is electronic records are far superior to records in every way. And we should start using electronic records today. It should be part of our maintenance operation. If you'd like more information on what I talked about today or electronic record keeping, or you have any questions, please give me a call. My name and phone number are at the bottom, as well as my email address, and I would look forward to talking to you. Thank you very much for watching this webinar on the importance of aircraft records.